We've got Dr. Thomas Wilson Ikubese, who is the convener. Yes, we fix revolutionary movement. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, but before this one, or while this one was there, you were also a presidential aspirant of ENN.
That's right.
And that's no more now, as a result of this pact.
By virtue of what we signed to on the Pact, the moment you have the emergence of the consensus candidate, it should terminate the aspiration of every other aspirant who is a member of Pact.
But how does that qualify or supersede party primaries?
Well, the bottom line is this. We have different shades of opinion. Some people in Pact felt that we should go through party primaries first before emerging, coming to sit down to pick our consensus candidate. And some also felt there's no point going through party primaries. Let's just go ahead and pick the consensus candidate ahead of the party primaries. Now, each side have the argument and they have their disposition. Now, those who felt that we should pick the consensus candidate before the party primaries were in the majority. We actually went into a vote, and they were in the majority as against those who said we should go ahead and do the consensus after the emergence of the party primaries.
But I'm just wondering, I mean, a lot of politicians we speak to, they will always tell you, look, anybody wants to do anything to get that ticket. Talking about the primaries, they attach far more importance. In fact, in some cases, depending on which state, when you're in the ruling party, they say, look, to them, even though they act it, when you get the ticket of your party in the primaries, that's as good as winning the election. So how come, in this case, they didn't think that the primaries was that important?
Okay, now let's look at the opinion of those who believe that we should pick the consensus candidate ahead of party primaries. Why did they go that route with the people who are in the majority in Pact? They felt that if we should say, let's pick a consensus candidate after party primaries, the moment you emerge as the presidential candidate of your party, you are no longer the owner of yourself. You become the property of the party. You cannot come to the table and discuss with other aspirants, other candidates, as the case will be then, and say, okay, I am dropping my ticket on the table for you. Whatever you have to do at that point will have to be at the injunction and the instance of your party. It becomes more complicated, it becomes more complex. Your party could even choose to say, we don't need any alliance, we don't need any coalition, we want to go all alone.
What makes you think they can't say that now? Because whoever has, okay, well, yes, has been nominated. What if the party says, well, we still have to go through our primaries? That's the statutory requirements for this election, isn't it? So what if he loses the party ticket?
As of today, Chamberlain, we have about 91 political parties in Nigeria. The easiest thing anyone can pick actually on the street now is a ticket of a presidential candidate. It's every member of Pact with less than 20.
I'm not sure the same thing for APC. How easy will it be?
That brings me to the question of one of your members, Kingsley Moghalu, who pulled out of that Pact meeting. It came to so many people as a surprise that he pulled out. And he actually said that you didn't come up with the right consensus candidate. That's his claim.
Well, Kingsley Moghalu has been a part of Pact from the beginning up to the last day that we had the election, which was on the 30th of August. And before we went into the election, we prepared a document prepared by a lawyer. I have it here. This is prepared by Abimbola Amaye Esquire, BTA Council, Lekki, Lagos. All right, and this is the MOU that we all signed to. It's a 13-point document, an MOU. And let me just mention the 10th clause there. It says, the aspirant, therefore, agree not to further contest against a preferred consensus candidate. Clause 9 says, the aspirants agree that at the emergence of the preferred consensus candidate, all other undersigned aspirants shall garner support, full support, in all forums and platforms to support the preferred candidate in the build-up to the 2019 general election. So by virtue of this document, which was signed by the 11 aspirants that were there on that day, the moment we have the emergence of the consensus candidate, it automatically puts a termination to your aspiration.
So does that terminate that of Kingsley Moghalu running for president under
YPP? By virtue
YPP?
of the document that we have here, that's what it's supposed to be.
But then the process that led to the emergence of the consensus candidate, was that process properly done?
when we were to go into this, we looked around and we felt, okay, we shouldn't go this route alone. We should look for credible people that should be there as a witness. And that was why we contacted Dr. Mrs. Obi Ezekwesili, former Minister of Education. And she was gracious enough to be there and to superintend over the election. It was a transparent election, okay? Now, two routes that we had to go through. The first stage, we have the names of everybody in the paper, and on that sheet, the name of the voter would not be there. So you are free to tick the name of any other aspirant. And the idea is, if not me, who do I have in mind that can do this job and salvage this nation? So we go through that route and everybody ticked. And some scored 1, some scored 0. Fela Durotoye scored 2. Kingsley Moghalu scored 2. Matthias Babasado scored 2. So they qualified for the next round. And in the next round, Kingsley Moghalu scored 3. Fela Durotoye scored 4. And Matthias scored 0. So the simple majority is Fela Durotoye. So it's a very simple, open, and transparent process.
Well, hold on. You had, the Pact was supposed to be 13 members.
No, we're more than 13.
More than
the
13.
first meeting were actually about 16 or thereabout.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many people signed the document?
11 people.
11. That is 11 presidential candidates.
That's right.
This is not their political parties, just the candidates themselves signing
That's right.
this. Of the 11 that signed, how many attended that election on the 13th?
Okay, the 11...
Sorry, of that
Yeah.
11, 3 were from ANN.
That's right.
Okay.
Myself, Fela Durotoye, Elisha Maide, 3 of us are from ANN.
Okay. How many attended that election?
All the 11 people that signed were there at the election.
How many walked out?
Now, 2 people walked out just before we signed the document. Ahmed Buhari walked out. Awal Abdullahi also left just before we signed the document. But they were there at the beginning of the proceedings.
Any reasons why they walked out?
Yes, they later came up with a release. The 3 of them, Ahmed Buhari, Awal Abdullahi, and Alkali Abubakar, 3 of them are from the northern part of the country, and they said that Pact did not consider geographical zoning in coming up with a consensus. And in the document that we signed, part of what we had in that document said that we would not give preference to a particular geographical location, because we were looking at excellence as against geography, that if we are going to have a new Nigeria, it's going to be a nation where your excellence, your intellect, and what you bring into the table would matter, not necessarily where you come from. So that's why they left, because they felt that we're not giving their part of the country consideration.
Is there a clause 13 in that memorandum?
There is a clause 13. Let me read clause 13 to you. Clause 13 says, it is also agreed by the aspirant that nothing in this document herein shall infringe on the legal right of any aspirant, including but not limited to his constitutional freedom of association, freedom of expression, and other rights as enshrined in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and other relevant laws.
So he was right when he said, well, predicating his actions on this, pulling out and continuing with his campaign is in line with the agreement.
Yeah, this basically says that you cannot infringe on the rights of anyone in Pact. So the question is, was his right infringed on in any way?
Has this document in any way infringed on his rights, for instance, number one? And then number two, perhaps this document didn't put into consideration some of those electoral relevant sections of the Electoral Act that suggest that he can actually pull out at any time he wants or run independently as a candidate.
That's why I read to you the clause number 9 and 10. 9 says that we have agreed that at the emergence of the consensus candidate, all of us will begin to work for that consensus candidate. And clause 10 says, aspirant therefore agreed not to further contest against the consensus. Now, the clause 13 basically says that this document shall not infringe on the right of any member of Pact. So the question is, has there been any form of infringement by signing this? Is there anything in here that actually goes against the rights of any member of Pact?
No, but he's quoting that and saying that that clause 13 talks about it asserts the supremacy of their constitutional rights to aspire and continue, and that's why he says, as a result of that, I am continuing with my
Did
presidential
you see anywhere
campaign.
here, Chamberlain, that says you can continue? There's no clause that says you can continue in this agreement. It
No,
only
but-
says that we will ensure that your right is not infringed on.
Tell us
That's
what
what
is
it
happening. Tell us what is happening. Did Kingsley Moghalu, for instance, think that he was going to get the consensus candidate and fell short of it? Is that the reason why he pulled out?
Everyone that went into that election went in with a mindset that I just might emerge as a consensus candidate. And if I emerge as a consensus candidate, that would be a big boost to my presidential aspiration, to my campaign, because every other young person will drop their aspiration and support me. We all went in with that ideology. Okay, so, and he did very well. He was the first runner-up. Durotoye just was ahead of him with just one vote. So he could have won that election, actually. So everybody went in believing that, well, it could just be me. It also might not be me. And that was why before we started, we had to address the people who are seated there and those who are watching all over the world that this is not about us. And the moment a consensus candidate emerges, we will work for that person. That's why the first day in Charlie Boy's house, we all held our hands. You probably have seen that video and said, we have agreed to work together. How do we work together?
Pact. Is this a third force?
It is meant to be the alternative first that will provide for Nigeria the leadership deficit that we have suffered over the years that has brought us to the comatose state that we are in today.